Rev your engines and get ready to hit the gas because Formula One's teams are racing against the clock to resist the sport's latest push to reduce outwash. With high stakes and fierce competition, the battle between the teams and F1 is heating up as they jockey for position in the fight for aerodynamic supremacy. But who will come out on top and claim victory in this high-speed showdown? Stick around to find out. In the world of Formula One, the smallest of changes can have a significant impact on the outcome of the race, which determines who is the first to cross the finish line. The aerodynamics of a car is among the most important aspects that determine whether a driver will win or lose a race. Teams had spent years looking for ways to gain an advantage over their rivals by controlling the flow of air around the front wing of their cars in the hope of improving their performance. This resulted in the development of several different maneuvers and strategies, such as the utilization of the front brake ducts and axle in order to produce outwash, which is the flow of air that originates from the trailing edge of a wing. These strategies, on the other hand, were not well received by the F1 chiefs or the FIA, both of which were of the opinion that the rules needed to be strengthened in these particular areas. As a result, a significant amount of work was put in to ensure that the laws would provide a level playing field and prohibit teams from acquiring an undue advantage over one another. In 2019, as a stopgap solution aimed at accomplishing this goal, a gentle introduction of these concepts was carried out. In the outer portion of the front wing, some of the more intricate surface geometries, cascades, and winglets have been removed, while blown axles have been completely outlawed. The teams had a variety of reactions to this change, and some of them expressed fear that it would have a negative influence on their performance on the track. Yet, in the end, it was a necessary step to ensure that the competition remained honest and that the best team won based on merit, as opposed to winning through ingenious techniques and loopholes in the system. So despite the fact that the regulations for 2022 represented a substantial revision, it was inevitable that the teams and the people who write the rules would engage in a game of cat and mouse. You have to understand that while the FIA's goal was to make the competition more exciting, by minimizing the impact of aerodynamics, the only thing that matters to the teams is improving the overall performance of their cars while adhering to the rules. This implies that they are constantly on the lookout for any potential loopholes that they might take advantage of. The Deft move that Mercedes pulled off at the Miami Grand Prix in 2022 is a good illustration of this principle in action. The Silver Arrows examined the regulations and discovered that they could expose the rear lower half of the end plate by modifying the tip section of the front wing flap. This was an opportunity that they took advantage of. They did this by angling the upper two flaps back on themselves and joining the end plate much further forward than the regulations had intended. This allowed them to achieve the desired result. Because of this, they were able to devise a novel strategy that gave them an advantage on the racetrack. It should come as no surprise that this did not sit well with the other teams. But that is how Formula One works. There is a never-ending struggle between the teams and the people who create the rules, and both sides are always trying to one-up the other. The effectiveness of the designs used in previous years may have decreased due to the changes in laws, but the effort that teams make to develop new strategies that generate more outwash is still ongoing. Despite the difficulties provided by the new regulations, a team needs to work toward finding a solution like this, since it can bring the group benefits. Mercedes is one of the teams that has been able to find a way to get around the new regulations. Their W14 model incorporates a concept that is comparable to that of previous designs, so they have been able to do this. Nevertheless, rather than angling the wing ends of the flap back onto themselves, they have removed them from the end plate and are holding them in place with thin metal brackets. This novel approach makes it possible to design the tip section of each flap, including the flap ahead, with a greater degree of aerodynamic precision. This applies to both the main flap and the flap ahead. It is anticipated that the flow of air over these surfaces will form a stream of vortices, which can be utilized to provide a stronger outwash effect. This solution is still a vital tool for teams wanting to gain an advantage in the extremely competitive racing world. However, it might not be as effective as older versions due to changes in the legal framework. Teams such as Mercedes display their dedication to remaining at the forefront of their business by continuing to push the frontiers of aerodynamic design. In addition, the end plate also gives rise to two winglets, both oriented in such a way that they face downward and toward the wing tips. This brings the total number of winglets produced by the end plate to 4. Because the rearward one is actually attached to the rear flap, it is almost certain that the two of them will work together to improve the outwash characteristics of the wing. This is because the rearward one is actually attached to the rear flap. This year, Mercedes is not the only team that has discovered a use for winglets in this lower rear quadrant of the end plate. Other teams have also found uses for them. Both Haas and Red Bull offer their unique approaches to the problem that is worthy of our consideration, and we must give each of these approaches the respect they deserve. Despite the fact that the makeup of the winglets is one of a kind, it is essential to keep in mind that the orientation of the winglets must also be varied to fit the aerodynamic characteristics of the tip section and end plate juncture. In the instance of Haas, this has resulted in the configuration of a two-tier winglet, which consists of a slot discovered in the surface and a slot gap in the flaps below it that line up with each other. There is also a slot in the gap that may be found in the flaps below it. In an effort to draw parallels between the VF23 and the Mercedes, the winglet of the VF23 has been tilted upwards. On the other hand, the winglet that is mounted on the Red Bull RB19 is a solitary component that is mounted in a rather neutral position. In each of these situations, the performance benefits of the winglet depend on how well it integrates with the rest of the wing. Otherwise, its presence will have little effect on the aircraft's overall efficiency. If the winglet does not integrate well with the rest of the wing, the benefits of the winglet's performance will not be realized. The front wing of the Aston Martin AMR23 Formula One car is a one-of-a-kind design that does not incorporate winglets in the lower rear corner of the structure. Yet the group has developed and implemented an outwashing solution that is noteworthy and on par with the advances developed by other teams. The strategy implemented by Aston Martin involves concentrating on the connection that exists between the uppermost flap and the end plate. This results in the creation of multiple surfaces along which vortices can propagate. The flap is deliberately angled in relation to the end plate to facilitate the release of vortices essential to the operation of the outwash effect. In order to ensure that the wing complies with their regulations, the design incorporates metalwork in the area where the flap connects to the end plate. This metalwork extended forward to the back section of the flap before it and featured a small cutout in the middle. It is interesting to note that the modifications to the regulations made for the 2023 season may have accidentally made it possible for more effective solutions to be developed and used during the current season. As a result of this, teams will likely continue looking into different ways to make use of the outwash effect so that they can obtain a competitive advantage. As the season develops, we can generally anticipate seeing continued development in this area as teams strive to increase their aerodynamic performance and gain an advantage over their rivals. If you have reached this far, like this video, subscribe to our channel and press the notification bell so you may not miss any future updates. See you in another video. Until then, take care. Do tell us your views in the comments section.